$1.5 billion.
Yeah.
You see a number like that on a defense contract, and, well, you usually think of the big players.
Right. A couple of new ships for a major navy, maybe an upgrade for an air force somewhere.
Exactly. But when that massive price tag is attached to Sudan, a country in the middle of a brutal civil war, and then you see who's selling, everything changes.
It really does. It stops being just a transaction. It starts to look like a roadmap for where this conflict is heading.
And it's a very scary map. Because the seller isn't Russia, it's not the U.S., not even China, really. It's Pakistan. And what they're selling, well, it's not blankets or food aid.
No. We're talking fighter jets, a massive number of drones, heavy munitions, things that can, completely rewire the war in East Africa.
Which is why we're doing this deep dive. We're digging into a new analysis from January 2026 by Eric Gelhag at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. And honestly, the big story here isn't just the weapons.
It's what they represent.
Yeah. The report calls it the Sudan shift.
And that's the key phrase right there. For the last couple of years, all we've heard from the international community is diplomacy. Diplomacy.
Get them to the table. Ceasefire.
Right. But this deal, this is a huge signal that the big regional powers, we're talking Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, they're done talking. They are moving from let's negotiate to let's win.
Or at the very least, let's make sure the other side loses.
Precisely. The whole strategy has shifted from diplomatic containment to military escalation. And to really get why that's so terrifying, you have to look at the hardware, these new and, frankly, strange alliances, and the real risk that Sudan is turning into another Libya.
Potentially worse than Libya.
Oh, potentially much, much worse.
Okay, so let's start there with the hardware, the nuts and bolts. Because $1.5 billion buys you a lot of influence in a war like this. What is Pakistan actually selling?
Well, it's basically a full air power starter kit. The most immediate part would be the K-8s, the Karakoram aircraft.
Okay, so for anyone picturing, a Top Gun-style jet, that's not what this is, right? The K-8 is a trainer plane.
It is, yes. It's an intermediate jet trainer. But that's a bit deceptive. In a war like this, a counterinsurgency, the K-8 is a workhorse. It's used as a light attack aircraft.
So it's cheap to fly, easy to maintain.
And it can carry rockets, gun pods, bombs. It's exactly what you use when the enemy doesn't really have an air force to fight back with.
Right. The guys they're fighting, the RSF, they mostly have pickup trucks with guns bolted on the back.
Exactly. They're called technicals. A K-8 can just fly above their effective range and drop munitions with very little risk. It's low-tech air superiority, but it's incredibly effective against a militia.
But it's not just the planes. The report mentions drones. A lot of them.
Over 200.
200. Are we talking the little quadcopters or?
No. The analysis suggests a mix, but it includes military-grade surveillance drones and loitering munitions. I mean, in modern warfare, 200 is a swarm. Just think about the intelligence advantage. The Sudanese army's biggest problem has been the RSF's mobility. They're fast, they hide in urban areas, they can melt away into the desert.
But with 200 eyes in the sky.
Suddenly, that invisibility is gone. You can track their supply lines, spot convoys coming across the border from Chad, and hit them before they ever get to the front. It's a game changer.
And then there's the big one. The one that, I have to admit, really made me pause when I was reading this. The JF-17.
The Thunder.
Yeah. This is where it gets really serious.
It's a whole different level. The JF-17 is a proper multi-role combat aircraft, a joint project between Pakistan and China. This isn't a trainer, it's a supersonic fighter jet.
Okay, but hold on. Why? Why would the Sudanese army need a supersonic jet? The RSF doesn't have an air force. Isn't that complete overkill?
It seems like it if you're just looking at the fighting around Khartoum, but strategically, it lets them project power. The JF-17 carries precision-guided munitions, smart bombs.
So they can hit targets with much more accuracy.
And from much further away. They can strike deep into RSF-held territory, hitting logistical hubs, command centers, maybe hundreds of miles from the front lines. Day or night, it massively extends their reach.
And sends a hell of a message.
It's a huge psychological blow. It tells the RSF, we now have a capability that you can never, ever match. It's demoralizing.
Okay, but here's the question I can't wrap my head around. Sudan is broke. The economy's collapsed. How does a government that can barely pay its own soldiers write a check for $1.5 billion?
Well, that's the thing. They don't.
So who does?
The reports all indicate that Saudi Arabia is the financial backer, the guarantor for the whole deal.
Saudi Arabia. The same country that's been hosting the Jeddah peace talks for the last 3 years.
The very same.
That seems like a massive contradiction. You're hosting the peace conference on Monday and buying fighter jets for one side on Tuesday?
Welcome to the Saudi pivot. And to get it, you have to understand the sheer frustration in Riyadh. They've been trying the diplomatic route since May of 2023. All those ceasefires, the talks, they all fell apart.
And all the while, the war was just getting worse.
Exactly. The RSF kept advancing, committing atrocities. The source highlights the mass killings in Al Jazeera, the siege of al-Fashir. The Saudis felt like they were being played.
Like the RSF was just using the talks to buy time to rearm?
That's the analysis. Riyadh came to a very cold, hard conclusion. The RSF, who they see as being backed by the UAE, believes it can win this war militarily, so they have zero incentive to actually negotiate in good faith.
So the logic is, if we make them start losing, then they'll come back to the table for real.
Precisely. They want to tip the balance. The thinking is, if you arm the Sudanese army to the teeth with this Pakistani hardware, you force a stalemate, you break the RSF's momentum, and only then will they negotiate seriously.
The old bombing them to the negotiating table strategy.
Yeah. A strategy which has a very, very mixed record historically. More often than not, more weapons just means more war.
But the Saudis aren't the only ones in on this. You mentioned a new triad.
Right, and this is an alignment that just a few years ago would have been unthinkable. You have Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey all pulling in the same direction on this.
That is a very strange group of allies. Weren't Turkey and Egypt practically on opposite sides of the war in Libya?
They absolutely were, and the Saudis and Turks have had their own major disagreements. But there's nothing like a shared fear to bring old rivals together, and they are all terrified of the same outcome: a completely failed state in Sudan.
Let's break that down, starting with Egypt. For them, this is right in their backyard. This is existential.
It is absolutely existential for Cairo. Look at the map. Chaos in Sudan spills north into Egypt, period. It's already happening. There are over 5 million Sudanese now living in Egypt.
And the report says 500,000 of those are new refugees, just since this war started.
Correct. Egypt's economy is already struggling. They simply cannot absorb that kind of influx. And then there's the even bigger issue: the water.
The Nile.
The Nile. Egypt is in this incredibly tense standoff with Ethiopia over the Grand Renaissance Dam. They need a stable allied government in Khartoum to support their position on water rights. The idea of an unpredictable militia controlling the Nile south of their border, it's a nightmare scenario for Cairo.
And they're not just watching from the sidelines. The source says they've actually been involved militarily.
Oh, yes. There are reports of the Egyptian Air Force striking RSF convoys coming out of Libya. Cairo has made it very clear they see the Sudanese army's survival as a core national security interest. They are all in.
Okay, so Egypt's motivation is clear. But what about Turkey? What's their angle here?
For Turkey, it's about strategic influence. They see Sudan as a key gateway to the rest of Africa, but it's also about rivalry, specifically rivalry with the United Arab Emirates.
The UAE. We haven't talked about that much yet, but they're the big backer of the other side, the RSF.
They're the elephant in the room. So for Turkey, propping up the Sudanese army is a direct countermove against Emirati influence in the Red Sea and the Horn of Africa. It's a strategic chess move. And it fits their pattern. They've sold drones to Sudan before.
So Sudan is basically just the chessboard.
In many ways, yes. And that's the tragedy of a proxy war. It stops being about what's best for the Sudanese people. It becomes about who controls the ports, who has influence, who can checkmate their regional rival.
And that leads directly to this Libya scenario that the analysis warns about.
It does. I mean, look at Libya. It's been fractured for more than a decade now. Why? Because every single time one side gets close to losing, their foreign sponsor sends another plane load of weapons to prop them back up.
Creating a permanent bloody stalemate.
Exactly. And that's the fear here. If the Sudanese army starts making big gains with these new Pakistani jets, the UAE isn't just going to pack up and go home.
No. The RSF will go to them and say, hey, we need anti-aircraft missiles. Now.
And they'll probably get them. And then the war escalates to an even more destructive level, and the cycle just continues.
So this brings us to the last, and maybe the most confusing player in all this, the United States.
The great American paradox. This is where the web gets really, really tangled.
Okay, so let's unpack it. The U.S. is officially part of the quartet trying to broker peace, alongside Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Egypt.
Correct. The official line from Washington is all about mediation, dialogue, ceasefire. They say it over and over. There is no military solution to this conflict.
And yet, The weapons fueling the military solution are coming from two of America's closest military allies in the region, Pakistan and Egypt.
Very close allies. And the source asks a really critical, if uncomfortable, question. Is it even plausible that Pakistan could make $1.5 billion arms deal involving advanced technology like the JF-17 without Washington at least knowing about it? Or, quietly giving a green light?
The analysis points to some interesting timing with high-level meetings.
It does. It mentions a 2025 White House visit by Pakistan's army chief, which was all about expanding Pakistan's role in regional security. And then you have the meeting between Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and President Trump, where MBS apparently urged the U.S. to get more involved.
Or maybe ask for a free hand to handle it their way.
That's the implication. So you connect those dots, a U.S.-Pakistan security summit, a U.S.-Saudi strategy session, and then boom, this massive Saudi-funded Pakistani arms deal. It's hard to see it as something completely detached from Washington's broader strategy.
It feels, if not coordinated, then at least tolerated.
The source suggests it might be an emerging American vision. Maybe Washington has quietly decided that the Saudi plan tipping the scales in favor of the army is the least bad option they have left.
So they're outsourcing the dirty work while keeping their hands publicly clean.
That's the paradox. You sponsor peace talks with one hand while your allies are fueling the war with the other. And it completely shreds the credibility of the diplomatic process.
Right. How can a U.S. diplomat tell the RSF to trust the process when U.S. allies are helping the other side bomb them?
You can't. And we've seen this movie before in Yemen, in Syria. Outside powers get involved thinking they can manage the outcome with just one more shipment of weapons.
That works.
It never works. It just prolongs the suffering and entrenches the conflict. It makes a political solution almost impossible.
The analysis talks about Sudan being at a fork in the road. It sounds like one of those paths is getting pretty overgrown.
Yeah, the de-escalation path is looking pretty remote right now. All the traffic is heading down the other path.
Which is?
A decade-long quagmire, that's the phrase used. A future where Sudan, as a unified country, basically ceases to exist. It becomes a patchwork of territories controlled by warlords and their foreign sponsors. A permanent bleeding wound in the heart of Africa.
A really bleak picture. And the biggest takeaway from this deep dive for me is just how connected everything is. This isn't just Sudan's civil war anymore.
Not at all. The real story is told by the weapon shipments, not the diplomatic press releases. And right now, all the hardware is pointing toward more war. It's the illusion of military resolution, this belief that you can solve a deeply political problem with force.
So when you, listening to this, see a headline about an arms deal, don't just think about the price tag. Think about the signal.
That's right. This $1.5 billion deal is a loud, clear signal that the key players have, for now, given up on peace and are doubling down on war.
It's a reminder that no civil war is ever really local. Sudan's future is being debated and decided in Riyadh, Cairo, Ankara, and maybe even quietly in Washington. The tragedy is the people who actually live there are the last to be heard.
That's the heart of it.
We're going to have to leave it there. A complex and, frankly, a disturbing situation that we will absolutely be keeping a close eye on. Thanks for breaking it down with us.
My pleasure.
And to you listening, keep questioning the official story. Until next time.